and I will be talking about claims, which is something which happens, of course, after a negative event has occurred. And let's see if I manage. I would like to quickly recall some of the specific features which come with nat cat losses, which are specific to this kind of claims in regards or in comparison to standard property claims like the typical fire or machinery breakdown claims. And then I will quickly go through a case history of different nat cat losses. All of these have actually occurred in Italy, but of course some of them are common pattern. The interesting thing is that you may have heard from Claudia before that she spoke very proficiently about other countries' schemes, but not much about Italy. It's not because she wanted me to do it, it's just because we don't have a scheme in place. But nevertheless, like Don Giovanni, we have the full catalogue in place. So we are enjoying the whole set of claims. So, going through the specific features, we shall present some of the natural catastrophe claims, and within the wider set of property and business interruption claims which normally come with them, they notably show, and in green you will see they usually require, so what comes is that they usually struck on wide areas, so wide surfaces, and a plurality of facilities and insured parties. So there's a need of a team of people, not just a single, even very experienced adjuster or fire investigation or these sort of things. You of course need very experienced technicians, but that is not enough. You may not rely on a single lonely wolf. You need a team, and you need logistic support to come with them. Then there is an issue of access for surveying and salvage recovery purposes, which is often limited or hindered, and sometimes even forbidden or prevented. As you may understand, it comes also after a fire, when the firemen do not allow insurance representatives to step in because it's their own authority and they want to feel relevant. Although perhaps they just increase the amount of losses. It is true that nowadays you can use other technologies, like for example the drones, or you need to put in place the appropriate links before the losses occur in order to be able to liaise with the authorities and to play in team also with them, not to be a counterpart in a sense, or to be put to the side, because it is very relevant what is done at the very preliminary stage of a claim or a loss. Of course, the sudden need of salvage and repair works or materials and equipment on a plurality of facilities and sites usually increase the prices and costs and reduce availability. So this is a case when time is money applies, the sooner the better. You can imagine after a hailstorm the cost of tiles, how much it goes up, especially if you don't have access to supplies, because these things usually do not happen in April or March, they happen in summer, and you know that if we consider Italy, but the same applies to most Mediterranean countries, in summer we are all on holiday, so people do not deliver, just that's how it works. There's another issue which is coming. Usually nat cat claims cause heavy business interruption losses, but growingly, given the globalization of supply chains, CBI, or contingent business interruption losses, come with it. That is, a loss or an earthquake in, say, an Eastern European country will most likely affect the supply chain of a number of German and Italian companies who are usually supposed to deliver in, say, France and Britain. So this is all going to be upset. Moreover, there is an unusual pressure, again, with regards to standard losses, by media and public opinion, and eventually authorities, when they don't want to step in because of polling, for example, reasons or elections. especially if when there are casualties, because of course we are always talking about money here, but we must not forget that these events, these occurrences usually trigger fatalities. So there's another set, of course, of relevant issues which need to be faced. And human lives and health and safety issues, of course, come before the mitigation of property damages and BI losses, thus making it further difficult to recover from losses from a financial point of view. And the last topic, I think, needs to be considered. This is coming from our latest experience. Until now, we have always been talking of these events as acts of God. Even in contracts and policies, you usually had this sort of definition. I'm afraid that given what we've also heard in the morning and we are hearing throughout the media, this is not so much going to be the case. Perhaps because there are less people going to Mass, at least in our country, but I'm afraid that there are other reasons. For example, let's speak about liability. Significant liability issues start to be raised given the attention of the public opinion, for example, on climate change and forecasting. Whether it's the weather forecasts, for example, there was a big concern because there was a negative meteor forecast given throughout, if I remember well, it was the last Easter season in Italy, and hotel tenders were charging and blaming, and I'm afraid that someone even started a legal action against the meteor forecasting services for having prevented people from just leaving for 2 or 3 days and going to enjoy their holidays. But, and this is a fact, there has been a criminal prosecution of the Earthquake Forecasting Commission. You know that you can hardly forecast earthquakes, but we have in Italy an earthquake sort of forecasting, probably is not the proper translation. In any case, there's a commission looking after these things, and members have been prosecuted, and some of them have even been found, were even found guilty after the L'Aquila quake in Italy. Furthermore, there have already been allegations of links, causal links, between the earthquakes, some earthquakes, and fracking, and or the storage and usage of gas under the soil. So in Italy we have wide storage capacity of gas. We use a lot of natural gas. Given the political tensions, especially in Eastern Europe, we tend to have wide strategic warehousing under the soil, in the soil, and this has allegedly induced vibrations and small seismic actions. These have already raised liability issues. Moreover, if you look at the legal system in most countries, at least if I look at it in Italy, there could be ground nowadays, if it is true that there is a causal link between the meteoric changes, the climatic changes, and the behavior of man, then there may be an issue with greenhouse gases emission and, or just CO2, for example, gas emissions, and nat cat losses. And I'm not a lawyer, not, of course, I'm a politician, but I wouldn't be surprised if in the future we are going to face a whole set of new issues with liability recoveries, or at least attempts. Now, let's have a look at, for a purpose, it's not a particularly interesting loss itself, but I wanted to draw your attention on a few lessons learned. It's a flood loss which took place last year in Italy in an automotive spare parts and central logistic facility. I can't say the name, of course, of this company, but it's a luxury automotive manufacturer, and it's not based in Bayern. Sorry. So they had the central logistic facility. They had a central logistic facility some 30 kilometers north of Rome, close to the Tiber River. The site had been surveyed by the group's own risk managers and insurers' loss prevention engineers. And since it was located within a mile from the Tiber River, a flood risk was analysed but considered to be limited as no other relevant freshwater sources were and are recorded nearby. Then what happened is that after a period of heavy rains, suddenly the whole facility of 36,000 square meters was completely flooded by water coming from a minor drainage canal on the opposite side of the Tiber River. So you see here, oops, no, I made a mistake, I'm afraid. Oops. Okay. Okay, here we are. Now, this is approximately the Tiber River. This was the facility, and you can see that there was such a small canal which was eventually flowing into the Tiber. And by the way, this was the A1 motorway, the Milan-Rome motorway, so a major facility. The level of the river, which did not flood, or at least just flooded the nearby countryside, so with no relevant damages, but the level of the river, of the waters of the river, raised, eventually preventing the little canal to deliver its own waters in the main river. And eventually what happened was that the waters found an obstacle here and entered and totally flooded the whole facility here. And by the way, since they did want to make loss adjusters happy, also the shopping center which was nearby. So you can imagine, you can see, have an idea, automotive parts, okay? Conveyor belts, IT system, this was the whole in and out hub for telecoms or IT data. You see the level of water in the offices. Now, lessons learned. Cause of the flood were the prolonged rainfalls, of course, which eventually raised the aquifer and the Tiber levels, thus preventing the possibility for minor streams, canals, to deliver their waters. This had not been sufficiently evaluated or taken into consideration during the risk management and loss prevention process. Total stop of the spares supply chain, both in and out. Workshops could not be supplied. And thanks to a consistent contingency plan and a close cooperation with ourselves, the insured was eventually able to resume the supply chain flow relatively quickly. Problems and threats, you can imagine what this meant. Total stop of the spare supply chain, both in and out. Workshops could not be supplied. Huge brand image defiance in case of prolonged stop. Just as a side fact, it's not a joke, I was the happy driver of one of the cars made in Baden-Württemberg. The problem was that since there were no spares in workshops in Italy, my car was burgled, the window broken, just to remove spare parts while it was parked on the way, and I couldn't find a place to have it reinstalled because there were no spare parts available. And of course, I was a victim, as many, many others. Of course, a contingency plan would be key in this. And just to give an idea how we eventually managed to limit the losses, because this is very important. What happens after a loss opens, the gate to a totally new world. You are doing a great job today focusing on how to handle and protect from a physical and financial point of view the risk. But there's a whole new world beyond once the losses have occurred. And there's a lot that we as loss adjusters and experts and recovering companies can do. So here you can see that we managed in more or less 1.5 months to limit the impact of the loss on the business of the company. And there was even a very minor recovery in the second month. I think I will skip this, but for saying that initial actions which are required to minimize the losses involve stabilizing the environmental conditions in the affected and nearby premises in terms of temperature and humidity. This is to stop both corrosion induced by damp and mold growth. you will be given slides in which techniques will be shown. I will be not going in detail through this because it would be too boring and too much time consuming. But of course, there's a whole set of interventions which can be put in place. There are companies which are focused in delivering these services, and loss adjusters should have the professional skills to drive this process. So you can go through machinery restoration, electronics restorations, document and data recovery, for example, through ultrasonic cleaning. Now, if you wish, we can perhaps show the video, which will take just a minute. I apologize with Claudia because there are some words in Italian, not by myself, but by the policyholder who was taking this video, so, and with others who can understand. But I think it's worth showing if we can. I apologize for the quality, which is not professional, of course. What you will be seeing going around are not paper confettis, they are metal sheets from the nearby roofs. There was a damping site in nearby, so they were saying it's taken removing the material from the damping site, but then it will be more exciting if I may allow, if I'm allowed. By the way, this is 30 kilometers from Milan, and just to say how this is going to impact everyone, this company is the Italian subsidiary of a German company belonging to a United Arab Emirates fund. So just to say how the world is global. These are all metal sheets. Okay? This is not Florida. So, not far from there, a leading international steel pipes manufacturer for the petrochemical industry and diverse industrial application has its main works in Lombardy, not Florida, close to one of the Milan airports. In August, it was another year, but it was approximately 30 kilometers from the one we've just seen. Coming in from a lake area, a storm struck the site and the whole set of civil and industrial estates on its path, causing damages shown hereafter and exposing all contents, including, for example, furnaces with refractories. I'm not showing all of this, but just to give you an idea what was inside. On a surface of 500,000 square meters covered. Stock and machinery to open air and drain. Do I still have the 5 minutes or not? Yes, okay. So, this is the whole site. This is what happens afterwards. Okay. So, lessons learned, climate change is creeping in and is closer than you would possibly expect. That was not Florida again, it was Lombardy. Are there liabilities for this? Whose? It could be discussed. It's an open issue for the future. As per the Murphy law, if something can go wrong, it will happen in the worst possible way and at the worst possible time, early August when most businesses are closed. By the way, the pipes are sold the world over. This means that CBI losses have possibly occurred I'm not aware of because I was not involved on those losses. Nearly everywhere, whether insured or not, around the world, since pipes productions and shipment were significantly delayed. Now, I will skip the snowfall loss, although by doing this we can perhaps quickly have a look. Nevertheless, thanks to appropriate loss adjustment, again, the production loss was just stopped to, you see, 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, which is amazing if you think of what happened. Perhaps you want to have a quick look at what happened in the Emilia earthquake, where the building there was absolutely not affected by the first shock, which occurred roughly on the 20th of May, and collapsed on the second shock, which was, or second main shock, which occurred on the 29th of May. The building itself was recent, made according to the, not the most recent, but the valid at the time when it was built codes. The problem was that no one has ever made a code or taken into consideration how these shelves, wooden shelves with 40 kilos each cheesecakes, you see how tall they are, would behave under an earthquake shock. And in fact, this wall was torn apart by the cheesecake shelves moving aside. And I have another set of similar situations whereby the building itself proved reliable enough, and in fact there were no casualties, but of course the damage was very significant. You can see. Of course, these cheesecakes are not supposed to be exposed to open air because they should be under a climate environment. Nevertheless, despite this, eventually, this is what we managed to save. Out of a total value of the cheesecakes, which was 13 million, the overall loss, including not only this was the loss to the cheesecakes alone, was 4.4, so 1/3. But we managed to recover, in terms of weight, the wide majority by saving and extracting and, of course, doing appropriate loss mitigation measures. Thank you very much.